Hello everyone, Hive still here, and welcome to part 2 of this series on item mechanics. In part 1 we covered all the basics of how items work, so be sure to check that out if you haven't already. If you've got all the basics down, this video will cover advanced but still universal item techniques, so this is the cool stuff that works on all characters and all items. So the last thing we covered in the previous video was the ZDrop. Pressing a grab button, like Z, will drop the item with essentially no lag. It's a one-frame animation and you can act immediately afterwards. This helps mitigate the main limitation of items, which is that you can't use your A moves while holding an item, as this would result in an item toss. Using Z-drops, you can quickly let go of items and then do whatever A move you want, typically an aerial since you have to be in the air to Z-drop. Now if you recall the basics of items, you might see where this is going. Items have no momentum when Z-dropped, Z-drop is lagless so you can act right away, and you can grab items during the startup of A button moves. Indeed, this means we have a way to use aerials while holding on to our items. Use Z-drop and then quickly do an aerial so that you recatch the item. This is called a Z-drop aerial catch, ZAC for short. You can do this both rising and falling. The rising version is often called instant Z-drop aerial catch or IZAC. Either way, this is the most important item tech by far, because it adds so much flexibility into your play. You can keep using your aerials while holding on to items. It's very important for characters like Diddy, because when he has Banana Peel in hand, people will start jumping to avoid being at risk of tripping. Diddy does have great aerials to fight air to air, but you don't want to let go of Banana Peel either, you do want to keep that resource, so ZAC lets you fight with aerials while keeping your item in hand. The other side of the coin is, if you do get a hold of your opponent's Banana Peel, or maybe King K. Rool Crown or Link's Bomb, maybe Rob Gyro, you might want to hold on to it as long as possible so as to deny that resource from your opponent. But not having the ability to use A moves at all makes you too predictable, so mixing in ZACs and IZACs is crucial. Z-drop aerial catches can be used in many different situations depending on your character, but typically it won't work if you're falling too fast, since a Z-dropped item starts at 0 speed regardless of your speed. Doing a ZAC while rising, aka IZAC, works consistently since you tend to Z-drop items slightly above you. Then, Z-drop at the peak of your jump when you're not moving too fast also works well, mostly to set up falling aerials. Doing ZAC while falling depends on your character. How exactly you drop the item is character dependent. If you're not falling too fast, then it's more doable. Floaty characters also have an easier time doing this. It's also animation dependent. For example, Diddy can't perfectly space a Z-drop bear on shield because the banana is dropped slightly above him, so if he's also going downwards, he can't catch it. But actually his backflip animation makes the Z-drop location different, which allows him to space the hits very low while doing Z-drop item catches. I'll let you explore the quirks of your character, but generally the easiest way to get a successful aerial catch is usually to input your aerial as soon as possible after the Z-drop. That should always work unless you're falling too fast. So to learn ZACs, you want to focus on pressing grab, letting go of the grab button quickly, and then pressing your aerial quickly afterwards. For example, say you're trying to do drop down from ledge, Z-drop, aerial catch. It might be tricky at first because you're probably used to dropping down and then doing a double jump plus aerial in quick succession. For IZAC at ledge, you want to focus less on the jump into aerial input and instead on the Z-drop into aerial input. So think about the sequence of input as drop down plus jump, and then Z-drop plus aerial. That'll quickly get you consistent with ZACs and IZACs, and then you can optimize them slowly by reducing the time between jump and Z-drop. If you're struggling with Z-drop aerial catches, there are two common input mistakes I want to mention. The first one is if you press the analog stick, the A button, or the C stick too fast before you've Z-dropped, in that case you'll get an item toss, so make sure you Z-drop first. The other common pitfall is, if you play a character with a Zair, you have to let go of the grab button completely before you input your aerial. If you input your aerial before you let go of Z, you'll get Zair. As a last note, there are times you don't want or need to immediately input an aerial after a Z-drop, usually for better spacing. The item aerial catch window after a Z-drop depends on your character and momentum and can be quite big, so sometimes you do have flexibility. It's even sometimes fine to not catch the item at all. For example, you can ZDrop, do a falling aerial which doesn't catch the item, and then do a quick grounded move to keep pressure on your opponent and recatch the item as it's falling onto you. There's a lot of creative stuff you can do with ZDrop, so I hope this gets you started. Before we wrap up, let's quickly go over some other techniques, less essential but still interesting and universal to all characters and items. First we have Instant Item Toss. Now Instant Item Toss is not much of a tech, it's just a consequence of how Z-Catch works. Basically you can pick up items on the ground with jump plus grab or in the air, which is the grab button, and throw them instantly since Z-Catch has basically no lag. There's not much more to it than that, it's very easy, just a way to surprise your opponent by quickly grabbing an item and throwing it at them. Next we have Jump Cancel Item Toss, also known as Glide Toss. This tech is done by tossing an item during the 3 frames of your jump squat. Your jump animation will be interrupted and you'll throw the item instead, briefly sliding on the ground. This basically just gives you some extra momentum. Benefits some characters more than others, but everyone can do it. Finally, we have Dash Attack Cancel Item Grab. If you press jump in the first 3 frames of your dash attack, you get a dash attack cancel. You end up jumping and doing an aerial instead of a dash attack. Combining that with items, if you grab an item with your dash attack and then cancel it with a jump, you'll get an item grab into a jump into an item toss. This lets you quickly pick up items and throw them without committing to a dash attack. It has the strange property of completely halting and even reversing your momentum, which can definitely be surprising. Additionally, if you press grab during your jump squat frames, you'll get a ZDrop instead of an aerial toss, giving you some more flexibility. You can then use an aerial to recatch the item. Now this tech is by far the most difficult I've come across, but it's very strong counterplay to items that linger on the ground with hitboxes like Diddy Banana Peel or Rob Gyro. You normally have to slowly and very carefully pick them up. Instead, dash attack is fast and usually has a good pickup radius, but committing to a full dash attack is not something you really want to do. So dash attack cancel item grab is definitely a useful tech to master, but it's quite challenging. I also want to quickly mention this quirky mechanic with very fast aerials. If you recall, aerials have a 5-frame catch window for items, but some aerials actually have less than 5-frame startup. You normally still get your 5-frame window, but if you hit characters before that catch window ends, it actually extends for a frame or 2 after hit lag ends. There's quite a few aerials that this applies to, basically any aerial with 4-frame startup or less. Pretty niche overall, so I'll leave it at that, but this can have some quite interesting applications as I outlined in this other video I made about it. Other tricks you can use are character dependent, but don't forget you can always combine your item play with special movement or even standard options like IRR and ledge slip. You can also use the fact that item backwards toss turns you around in the air, which gives you access to specific aerials or even tethering to ledge. You can also use item physics to bounce them on the ground or on the side of the stage. This can be really useful for ledge trapping and edge guarding, but not all items behave the same. There's also a ton of specific character tech, like Peach's float allowing her to use aerials without Z-dropping, Diddy being able to cancel his pop gun into banana peel toss, Link using his bound to recover. There's a ton of little tricks and I'll leave it up to you to explore your own character in depth. That's gonna do it for this video and this series on item mechanics. Please let me know if there's some useful tech that I missed and I'll be sure to at least stick it in the comments below, or maybe eventually make a part 3. Otherwise, I hope this was helpful. If it was, give the video a thumbs up, subscribe, and catch me using these item techniques on Twitch at twitchtv.hivesteel. Until then, be sure to keep practicing and doing your best.